Welcome to Anger Management. These are our course objectives for this training. Anyone can benefit from anger management class. It seems that anger is everywhere around us. Watch the news on TV or via the internet, and you will see that many of us have anger control issues. Uncontrolled anger is a significant contributing factor in domestic violence, spousal abuse, child abuse, workplace violence, and other aggressive situations that people find themselves in. Anger is not very good for our health and our overall well-being. This class will provide you with some self-help tools to help control or manage your anger. You can apply these tools at home, at work, in the car, or in any other situation that you find that anger control is an issue. We view angry feelings as a normal emotional reaction to frustration in our everyday world. It is natural to become angry when we have a goal and that goal is blocked in some way. Most of the time we do not choose to be angry, but somehow we are suddenly in that feeling. Often we don't even know we are angry until we feel it. Anger can be brief, lasting only a second or two. You could be happy one moment and angry the next. Angry feelings may also continue over a long period of time. If you are angry a lot, but your feelings are not connected to life circumstances, we call it a mood. Angry moods lead to angry feelings coming on stronger and faster. Once anger begins, it generates changes in our expressions, our voices, and in the way we think. It also creates impulses to action. Sometimes we have thoughts that generate anger. Other times we have thoughts that occur at the same time as anger. It is also possible for your anger to generate thoughts about what you are angry toward. Anger isn't just one emotion, but a family of emotions that are related to each other, both in our brains and in our behavior. People often give a variety of names to their angry feelings, which range from mild irritation to rage. When we are aware of the emotion, it becomes a feeling that is felt somewhere in our body. Anger is an emotion that is normal to all of us. Anger is a recognition that we have been hurt or feel threatened. It is a warning signal and a clear indication that something is wrong. This may be a signal to make a clear decision to protect yourself. Anger is a healthy release. It takes an enormous amount of energy to hold anger inside, which may cause fatigue, boredom, and physical illness. If you release your anger appropriately, you may find that you develop healthier relationships. Positive use of anger can also build self-esteem. If you are able to tell someone your feelings instead of keeping them inside, you are saying to the world, "I am a valuable person and I expect to be treated as such." Anger expression can be viewed as a behavior, and like all behavior, it has a purpose. Another way to say this is when we get angry, we are usually trying to accomplish some goal, like getting somebody to do something, or to be heard, or to solve a problem, or to get one or more of our needs met. The only problem is that anger rarely is effective in getting us what we want. Perhaps 95% of the time, it actually makes things worse. Anger management is not about never getting angry, which would be an unrealistic goal and probably undesirable, given how our brains are wired. Anger management is about finding other more positive ways to communicate or behave so that you become a more effective and satisfied person who has better relationships with other people. So how can you tell if anger is a problem for you? The short answer is that anger is a problem for you if the cost of it is greater than the benefit you get from it. Here are some of the costs of anger. Your health. People with normal blood pressure who scored high on a rating scale for anger were nearly 3 times more likely to have a heart attack or require bypass surgery within 5 years. If you are hot-headed and explode with anger, you may be at greater risk of having a stroke or dying. Cost 2 is your self-esteem. While some people feel justified in getting angry, most people simply don't like themselves very much if their anger is too intense, if it is too frequent, or if it lasts too long. During an outburst, you may actually feel good, but afterwards, when you return to normal, you may begin to feel guilty or have remorse for that outburst, especially if you can see the negative effect it has had on people in your life. Number 3 is your relationships. This is usually one of the heaviest costs of anger. Disruption or loss of relationships, or loss of respect with people in your life that are important to you. This is especially true if your anger reaches the point of turning to physical aggression. In fact, most frequent reason for people to attend anger management classes is to salvage a relationship, usually with a spouse or a partner, but also with a parent or child before it is too late. It is difficult for a relationship of any kind to survive very long in an atmosphere of anger or similar emotions. Explosive anger creates fear and emotional distance in others. Simmering anger creates an extremely tense atmosphere, devoid of trust and openness. Often, people try to repair the damage they created with angry outbursts or irrational anger, but this takes a great deal of time, if it works at all. It is usually not easy for your partner or family member to recover from a major assault from you, even if it is only on a verbal level. You may feel better after the explosion, but the other person is then left with all that negative feeling. Remember, you can't unring a bell. Once you explode, that image stays with that other person for a long time. If anger turns to aggression or violence, the consequences are even more severe. The 4th cost is your children. The effect of children witnessing extreme conflict in the home can be devastating, more harmful than most of the time than a parental divorce. Although many adults believe they have protected their children from exposure to domestic violence, 80-90% of the children in those homes can give detailed descriptions of the violence experienced in their families. The detrimental effects of intimate partner violence on children have been clearly established through research studies and observations of adult survivors in domestic violence programs. And cost number 5 is the workplace. There is no question that poorly handled anger, frustration, and resentment sabotage workplace productivity. Studies show that up to 42% of employee time is spent engaging in or trying to resolve a conflict. This results in wasted employee time, mistakes, stress, lower morale, hampered performance, and reduced profits and/or service. This training is organized around 8 core skills of anger management that have been found to be very effective for participants. Anger management tools. Number 1, recognize stress. Stress is often the trigger that takes us from feeling peaceful to experiencing uncomfortable, angry feelings in many common life situations. Whether the stressor is external or internal, scientists have discovered that the major systems of the body work together to provide one of the human organism's most powerful and sophisticated defenses, the stress response that you may know as fight, flight, or freeze. Before your stress response turns into anger or aggression, use stress management strategies to get it under control. Number 2, develop empathy. To empathize is to see with the eyes of another, to hear with the ears of another, and to feel with the heart of another. Lack of empathy leads to poor communication and a failure to understand others. To manage anger, it often helps to see our anger as a combination of other people's behavior and our lack of empathy. Number 3, respond instead of react. Many times we become angry because we find people and situations that literally push our buttons, and we react just like a jukebox that automatically pulls down a record and starts playing when you make a selection. Rather than reacting to anger triggers in this fashion, you can learn to choose how to deal with frustrating situations. to respond rather than automatically react like that jukebox. Number 4, change that conversation with yourself. What you tell yourself is what you get. We are constantly having inner conversations, also called self-talk, that create, decrease, or intensify our feelings and emotional states, including anger. Learning to recognize and modify that conversation is an important tool in anger control. Number 5, communicate assertively. Anger expressed toward others is often a misguided way of communicating a feeling we have or a need that is not being satisfied by other people or situations. Assertive communication is a set of skills to teach you how to honestly and effectively communicate how you feel and how you are responding to things without getting angry or hostile about it. Number 6, adjust expectations. Anger is often triggered by discrepancy between what we expect and what we get. Learning to adjust those expectations, sometimes upward and other times downward, can help us cope with difficult situations or people, or even cope with ourselves. There are 4 ways to adjust those expectations that are simple thought skills to acquire. Number 7, forgive, but don't forget. Anger is often the result of grievances we hold toward other people or situations, usually because of our perception and feeling of having been wronged by them in some way. Resentment is a form of anger that does more damage to the holder than the offender. Making the decision to let go is often a process of forgiveness, or at least acceptance, and a major step toward anger control. Number 8, retreat and think things over. We are pretty much incapable of resolving conflicts or thinking rationally in an argument when our stress level reaches a certain point. To avoid losing control either physically or verbally, it is often best to take a temporary time out and leave the situation. This tool of anger management works much better if you commit to return within a reasonable amount of time to work things out, and you work on your self-talk while trying to cool down. Our first anger control tool is dealing with stress. Stress and anger tend to go hand in hand. The higher one's stress level, the easier it is to allow our anger to get out of control. The creation of stress is a simple equation. Stress is created when we have more demands than resources to meet those demands. For example, let's say you buy gifts for 10 people and you only have time to shop for 5 of them. This can create some stress. Learning stress management techniques is an effective way to reduce the physical, behavioral, and emotional symptoms caused by stress. One of the major challenges of living and thriving in current times is managing our stress levels in a complex world with many demands and expectations. Small daily hassles, such as getting our children to school on time, can add greatly to our levels of stress. We can also feel stressed over much larger concerns. The effects of stress on your health can be significant. People suffering from intense ongoing work or personal stress may develop other cardiovascular problems, such as heart attacks or hardening of the arteries. Chronic stress can take a toll also on the immune system, making you more susceptible to colds and infections. Some other stress-related illnesses include asthma, diabetes, colitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, eczema, and ulcers. Stress also contributes directly or indirectly to many common mental health conditions. Probably the most common are anxiety and depressive disorders and problems. Anxiety disorders are extremely common and are frequently brought on by work and personal stress. Common indications of anxiety disorders include irritability, inability to concentrate or relax, insomnia, and a sense of fear. Many times people also have physical symptoms with their anxiety, including nausea, heart palpitations, muscle tension, sweating, hyperventilation, and panic. Depression is a disorder of mood and emotions that has a strong stress component. Often depressed people do not realize they are depressed because they get used to feeling sad with little joy or capacity to experience life's pleasures. Resentment, anger, and irritability are commonly a part of depression. Depressed people often feel hopeless or helpless, feelings made worse by stressful events in their lives that they have difficulty coping with. Here are 7 common workplace stressors and some tips on how employees can mitigate their effects. Heavy workload and long hours can make for overtired and stressed employees. If you have too great a workload, you'll want to focus on prioritization to start with. Look at your projects and tasks and order them by deadline. Ask yourself, what can I stop doing, do less of, or do more efficiently? Communicate with your management about conflicting deadlines, responsibilities, and overload. Share how you will handle them. Ask for help when you cannot resolve your conflicts. Unrealistic demands create acute frustration and even anger. If you are stuck with demands you know you cannot meet, take a breath. Ask yourself what could make the demand possible. Perhaps you need to reprioritize existing projects. Perhaps you need more time. Communicate your issues to your management, along with proactive suggestions for a different way to meet the end goal. Finally, if you can't budge the demands, do your best. Don't beat yourself up for not meeting unrealistic demands. If you need to justify yourself, focus on the facts and not your feelings. Ongoing organizational change is unavoidable, but moving people around and changing their management structure or job descriptions has the potential to create an uncertain environment. The need for certainty is one of 5 fundamental domains which activate strong threats and rewards in the brain. When you are involved in an organizational change, seek to understand the change as completely as you can. Focus on what the change means at the organizational level, and then at your level within the organization. If your management line has changed, seek out time with your new manager. Find ways to share your skills and personal situation with your new boss. Ask your new manager about their expectations, style, and next steps. Finally, keep an open mind and look forward, not behind. Change can be positive. Look for the opportunities instead of focusing on the threats you perceive in the new environment. Not having a specific direction in your career can create uncertainty. A career plan can make all the difference in how you feel, not only about your career, but about your current job. Take the time to think about what you want to achieve in your career. Define a career vision. Evaluate your skills and build yourself a learning plan. Focus on building and maintaining a professional network. Uncertainty can also result from badly defined job roles. If you feel like your job role has not been clearly defined, reach out to your management. Share your understanding of the role and ask for clarification. Be ready with proactive recommendations. Employees who don't feel valued quickly become unmotivated. If you don't feel like your work is valued and appreciated, start by taking a hard look at quality of your work. Are there actions you need to take to improve your work? Once you decide it's good enough, consider how others see your work. You may need to work harder at communicating the work you have done and highlighting the value of your work. If the problem is not quality or visibility, it could be a question of management style. Does your management focus on the negative versus the positive? Find ways to share best practices and positive outcomes with peers. Congratulate yourself when you have accomplished something you are proud of. When relationships are bad at work, things can get uncomfortable. There are many scenarios for poor relationships, but the focus here will be on 2. Sometimes we have no choice but to work closely with someone we dislike. Active dislike can impact us in many ways, not the least of which is a foundation for bias. Finding common ground can help to forge a connection. Take some time to get to know the person better and seek out things you have in common. If you are having difficulty getting along with more than one person, give some thought to how others perceive you. Do you show a genuine interest in others? Do you give in often to negative thinking patterns? If your passion comes off to others as being emotional, learn how to better manage your emotions by identifying the message they are trying to tell you and addressing the problem, not the emotion. The negative impacts on both the individual and the organization of bullying and sexual harassment have been widely documented for years. But bullying and sexual harassment are still looming realities in the workplace. If you feel you are being bullied or harassed, take steps to protect yourself. Document the situation. Share it with the appropriate person in your organization. Call in your social network to provide you with moral support, reminding you of your self-worth. What is stress? Stress is a bodily response to life demands called stressors. This means that your body stresses whenever a demand or requirement is made of you, and you respond to it. This definition highlights one of the most important things to know about stress and stressors. What may be extremely stressful to you may not affect other people at all because of your different bodily responses to the same stressor. You may have better resources to cope with an irritating coworker. In this case, the coworker would be much more of a stressor for you than for other people on your job. On the other hand, you may have better resources to deal with extreme time pressure to complete a project. In that situation, the boss putting pressure on you to complete something would not constitute a stressor for you, but may be very stressful for your coworkers. Sometimes the potential stressor may originate outside of ourselves, and other times the potential stressor may be within either our own bodies or minds. External stressors include job demands, the degree to which you can make your own decisions about your job or tasks, your physical environment, marital conflict, parenting challenges, daily commutes, financial pressures, and excessive demands on your time. Internal stressors can be physical, like fatigue or illness, or psychological. Psychological stressors include job dissatisfaction, having negative feelings about your life in general, or holding resentment towards others. Other examples of internal stressors include feeling inadequate or inferior to people around you, or worrying excessively about your life. Stress can have many positive effects, such as challenging us to perform at higher levels, motivating us, keeping us at our peak, and focusing our thoughts and behaviors to reach an important goal or objective. This is especially true if our stressors are acute. This means that they occur, our bodies respond, we successfully cope, and then we return to normal. Short bouts of stress actually increase the immune system's ability to ward off infections and promote well-being. However, if acute stressors occur too frequently or are too intense, we may lack the resources to cope. Under these circumstances, we may become overwhelmed and enter a state that some scientists are calling being stressed out, as opposed to just being stressed. Are you stressed or are you stressed out? Why do we have undesirable results of stress when stressors in our life become too much for us? The function of the stress response, after all, is not to cause illness or problems for us. Rather, most scientists feel that the fight or flight response evolved with the objective of ensuring survival and safety. When things are normal, our powerful stress response system sharpens our attention and mobilizes our bodies to cope with life events that we perceive as threatening. We cope, our bodies return to normal, and we go on with our lives. But if stress for us is chronic or overpowering, then our system becomes overwhelmed or derailed. Our stress response causes problems for us, either medical, emotional, or behavioral problems. In short, we become stressed out or overloaded. When this happens often enough, our smooth running and protective stress system runs amok, contributing to numerous diseases and disorders that affect our bodies, our minds, our emotions, and our behaviors. Whether the stressor is external or internal, scientists have discovered that the major systems of the body work together to provide one of its most powerful and sophisticated defenses, the stress response you may know as the fight, flight, or freeze response. This response helps you to cope with changes or demands in your personal life, in your family life, or in the workplace. To do so, it activates and coordinates the brains, glands, hormones, immune system, heart, blood, and lungs. Your natural stress response provides the tools you need: energy, oxygen, muscle power, fuel, pain resistance, and mental acuity, all at a moment's notice. Let me give you an example of how it works. The stressor is that you are a customer service representative. Your company puts a lot of pressure on you to upsell more products to customers who call in for problems with their system. Your boss informs you that you are below quota and in danger, even though your customers seem extremely appreciative of the help you have been giving them. What happens in your brain if you perceive this as a stress? Immediately, stress hormones are released into your body, the primary one being cortisol. Cortisol is very important in marshaling systems throughout your body, including the heart, lungs, circulation, metabolism, immune system, and skin, so it can quickly deal with your boss. Other chemical messengers are released. The most well-known of these is, of course, adrenaline. These messengers activate an area inside the brain which is thought to trigger your emotional response to your boss's threats. Common emotional reactions would be fear of losing your job, anger at the pressure. Chemical messages are also sent to another brain structure called the hippocampus to store your emotional experience with your boss into a long-term memory. Your brain will alert you to the danger in similar future situations. Your response by your heart, lungs, and circulation. So if you continue to experience your boss's remarks as acute stress, your body will continue to try to respond to it in these ways. Your breathing becomes rapid as your lungs try to take in more oxygen. Your blood flow may actually increase 300 to 400%, priming the muscles, lungs, and brain for added demands. Your stress system thinks you are going to either fight your boss or run away, so it is preparing your body for either outcome. Your spleen discharges red and white blood cells. Who knew? Allowing your blood to transport more oxygen. So your immune system's response is the following. At this point, your body sees your boss as an enemy and thinks it has to line up defensive soldiers to deal with the threat in case you get injured. Your released hormones dampen parts of your immune system so that the infection fighters, including those important white blood cells, can be redistributed. These immune-boosting troops are sent to your body's front lines where injury or infection is most likely, such as the skin, bone marrow, and the lymph nodes. After all, who knows where the boss will strike? The first step in stress management is stress alert. This means becoming aware that you are stressed out. Many people simply are not aware of how stressed out they actually are or how stress may be affecting their health and their behavior. Learning to recognize the signs is the first step toward dealing with your stress. What signs do you notice before becoming stressed out? Step 2 is make life changes to reduce your stress triggers. Some stresses in your life are changeable, but it takes effort and commitment to make those necessary life changes. The most common stresses in this category are related to how you manage time, how you manage finances, how you deal with family and relationships, and the amount of overload you have in your daily life. Another changeable stress is the match between you and your job or occupation. There are 8 practical tips for reducing stress triggers. Number 1 is take time off. Take a vacation or a long weekend. During the workday, take a short break to stretch, walk, breathe slowly, take a day off and go to the beach, relax. Number 2 is manage your time. Set realistic goals and deadlines. Plan projects accordingly. Do must-do tasks first. Schedule difficult tasks for the time of day when you are most productive. Tackle easy tasks when you feel low on energy or motivation. Number 3, set limits. When necessary, learn how to say no in a friendly but firm manner. Number 4, choose your battles wisely. Don't rush to argue every time someone disagrees with you. Keep a cool head and avoid pointless arguments altogether. Number 5, use calming skills. Learn not to act on your first impulse. Give your anger time to subside. Anger needs to be expressed, but it is often wise to do something that takes your mind off the situation. The break allows you to compose yourself and respond to the anger in a more effective manner. Number 6, if appropriate, look for less stressful job options. But first ask yourself whether you have given your job a fair chance. Number 7, take control of what you can. If you're working too many hours and you can't study enough, ask your boss if you can cut back. Number 8, don't commit yourself to things you can't or don't want to do. If you're already too busy, don't promise to decorate for an event or for your child's school. If you're tired and you don't want to get out, tell your friends you'll go out another night. Learn to take care of yourself. So what are the main sources of stress in your life and how can you reduce them? Step 3 is adjust your mind view. For a potential stress trigger to stress us out and affect us, it first has to be experienced or perceived as a stressor. Many of these stress triggers in our lives don't need to stress us out if we just change our perspective on them or develop better resources to deal with them. For instance, if you develop the skills of a lion tamer, that lion out there wouldn't bother you at all. You can change your mindset toward many things in your life that will reduce your stress. Start by changing the conversation you have with yourself by trying the following self-statements to reduce your stress. Don't sweat the small stuff, and remember, it's all small stuff. I can deal with this. I have dealt with much more stress in the past. Will this be important 5 years from now or even next month? This does not have to be catastrophic. It is merely a blip in my existence. Tough times never last. Tough people do. My anger is a signal. Time to talk to myself and to relax. It is impossible to control other people and situations. The only thing I can control is myself and how I express my feelings. If people criticize me, I can survive that. Nothing says that I have to be perfect. Sometimes the things that stress me are stupid and insignificant. I can recognize that my feelings come from having old primary feelings re-stimulated. It is okay to walk away from the conflict or problem. I am feeling stressed because I don't have the resources to deal with this situation right now. I don't need to berate myself or put myself down over it. Applying this principle to your life, how could you reduce stress by having a different mind view about a stressor? Step 4, apply stress guards. Let's face it, some stressors are unavoidable and are a part of our lives, at least for the time being. In this case, we should learn ways to lessen the effects of stress in order to minimize the damage. Stress guards include improving your health through diet and exercise, relaxation or meditation techniques, sleeping better, and developing social support networks. We all know that exercise is good for us. Its effect on stress and your health is considerable. Walking is one of the best ways to prevent heart disease. Some of the most promising research has to do with the way exercise affects the brain. Aerobic activities such as jogging, swimming, biking for 20 minutes 3 times per week is helpful in reducing stress. A healthy diet helps to stress guard us in so many ways. When you feel threatened or pressured for a period of time, your body assumes that energy supplies are being drained. Your stress response kicks in automatically, not distinguishing between running away from a predator and getting ready to fight. As part of this process, your liver is signaling to convert energy into long-term storage. Your stress hormones then encourage food-seeking behavior, making sure that your supplies are replenished. Stress makes us hungry. If we then make poor food choices, our stress responses are intensified in ways that can very quickly spin out of control. Sleep is a vitally important activity in the natural world. Sleep deprivation qualifies as a stressor in the sense of making life miserable and in the sense of producing more load on us to cope with. Trying to maintain normal sleep-wake patterns can greatly aid our ability to cope with our world when we are awake. Relaxation or meditation can greatly reduce our stress and puts us into a health envelope. You should meditate twice a day for 20 minutes to achieve this result. But you can also learn to meditate at work or standing in line at the grocery store. The trick is to breathe deeply and then to focus on your here and now body feelings, putting distracting thoughts out of your mind. It is amazing what even a 2-minute exercise can do to reduce your stress and make you feel better. The ability to recognize how your body reacts to stressors in your life can be a powerful skill. Most people are more aware of the weather, the time of day, their bank balances, than they are of the tension in their own bodies. Your body registers stress long before your conscious mind does. Muscle tension in your bodies is your body's way of letting you know that you are under stress. Breathing exercises have been found to be very effective in reducing stress. The following exercise can be used at work or at home. Sit or lie down in a comfortable position with your arms and legs uncrossed and your spine straight. Breathe in deeply into your abdomen. Let yourself pause before you exhale. As you exhale, count 1 to yourself. As you continue to inhale and exhale, count each exhalation by saying 2, 3, 4, and so on. Continue counting your exhalations in sets of 4 for 5 to 10 minutes. Notice your breathing gradually slowing, your body relaxing, and your mind calming as you practice this breathing meditation. Here are 10 tips to reduce stress. Take 40 deep, slow breaths each day. Spread them out evenly throughout your day to avoid hyperventilating. You can benefit from associating the deep breaths with some common work occurrence, such as the telephone ringing or watching the clock. Tip 2. Use regular relaxation periods for work breaks. Try 15 to 20-minute periods of undisturbed time away from the phone. Commit to using this for 4 to 6 weeks to begin, just to see the benefits. Another suggestion would be to take a short walk. Tip 3. Get regular exercise. Aerobic activities such as walking, jogging, swimming, or biking for 20 to 30 minutes 3 times per week is helpful in reducing stress. It kicks off stress-reducing chemicals in your brain. Be sure to check with your doctor first if you have any health issues. Eat sensibly. Avoid caffeine. Do not cope with stress by using alcohol and drugs. If you're stressed out, caffeine is like throwing gasoline on a fire to put it out. Plan for growth in all aspects of your life, not just work and finances. Plan for growth in your family, relationships, spiritual interests, vacations, hobbies, anything you can think of. Positive attitudes really help. Choose to see difficulties as opportunities for growth. Protect yourself from negative coworkers and relationships. Do not get caught up in others' negative thinking. They will only serve to rip off your peace of mind and positive energy. Take good care of yourself. Learn to recognize whether a person will help you or hinder you. Include in your inner circle only positive and encouraging people who will hold you accountable to your new goals. Remember that you cannot control all the people and situations that happen around you. The only one you can truly control is yourself and the way you respond to stressful people and situations. Give sincere compliments freely and smile. Choose to look for the good things happening around you every day. You might be surprised at what you find. Learn to really listen. It is the best communication technique that you can develop. It is the highest act of love that a person can do for another. The expression of emotion is often passed down from our parents, guardians, or caregivers as children. Many of us often express our emotions or lack the ability to do so based on what we learned in childhood. Some of us are very good at knowing how we feel and expressing it, while others struggle to do so. It is crucial to express emotion in order to relate to those around us. Our ability to know how we are feeling, as well as our ability to accurately sense the feelings of those around us, help to make positive connections with others. This characteristic is often called empathy. Emotions are what allow us to grow in love. Emotions fill us with a sense of connection to others. How we experience the world, relate to others, and find meaning in life are dependent upon how we regulate our emotions. Two of the most important traits associated with emotional intelligence are empathy and social awareness. Empathy is the capacity to feel another person's experience. Empathy requires knowing the perspective of others and being able to see things from the value and belief system of the other person. It is the ability to fully immerse oneself in another's viewpoint, yet be able to remain wholly apart. Empathy is important in the world because lack of it leads to poor communication and a failure to understand others. Empathy on a personal level is important because it allows us to understand social interactions and anticipate the behavior of others. Empathy also allows others to understand us. They are emotionally attuned to us and can see the world from our point of view. Lack of empathy leads to all sorts of problems in our world. This lack of empathy keeps people from feeling what it is like to be hurt. A lack of empathy is a sign that people think only of themselves. These people are concerned only with their own ideas and feelings, not others. They push only their own issues while not seeing the needs of others. Some people seem to go through life almost oblivious to the impact they are having on others in their world. Often they upset people at work or in their family due to their behavior, but seem stunned when they find out that people are reacting to them in a negative way. Lacking empathy, they aren't able to read others enough to see what impact their behavior is having, so they keep on doing the same thing, which unfortunately keeps getting them the same result. When talking to someone, imagine there is a video camera in the corner of the room recording your behavior. Ask yourself, how am I looking right now? How am I being seen from the viewpoint of other people? Is the message I'm delivering the same one they are receiving? The feeling of empathy starts at a very young age and probably is developed by the manner in which infant and parent are attached to each other emotionally. This attachment is formed by parents or caretakers responding to the infant's feelings in a positive way, so that the infant learns to trust and to be concerned with the feelings of other people. Empathy is built through increased awareness of yourself. The more you understand yourself and your emotions, the better you will be in understanding, appreciating, and relating to the feelings of others. Empathetic listening is a type of listening that goes further than ordinary listening. This type of listening uses another person's point of view to see the world as others see it. It provides a higher level of understanding of how others feel. Empathetic listening is not a skill that most people have, but it can be developed with practice. Empathetic listening is much more than just hearing. It is listening while you suspend your normal filters that determine what you hear. Everyone has these filters. If your filter is different from another's, you may hear the exact same message in a different way than he or she does. What are some common filters that influence what we hear? Filter 1, the right-wrong filter. Using this, you listen for evidence that what the other person is saying is wrong and you are right. If you are indeed listening to justify your position, you can hardly be listening with empathy. Filter 2, loved, not loved filter. With this, we completely miss the point of what our companion might be trying to communicate to us because all we are listening for is, do they still love me or are they going to leave me? Filter 3, criticism put-down filter. Any complaint or problem the other person has is heard as a personal criticism of us, rather than a legitimate complaint the other person may have. Filter 4, what am I going to say next filter. This is listening, but with your answer running. Your real goal with this type of listening is to one-up the other, to prepare a comeback, to have a better story, to promote your self-interest, or to prove someone wrong. Filter 5, get to the point. If you only listen in order to get to the point, you might miss important information that will help you understand how the other person experiences his or her world. Persons who use this filter are often very impatient. Empathetic listening leads to a better understanding of people and fewer mistakes and misunderstandings in almost all situations. Good listening is a valuable tool to build trust with others and win respect, qualities needed to be seen as a leader and to be successful. Empathetic communication requires awareness of the messages you are sending and the messages you are receiving from the other person. Some of the messages are delivered or received with words, while the majority of the messages are done with nonverbal communication. Let's start with words and phrases we use to communicate. Avoid barriers to effective communication because they make it difficult for you to listen to others with empathy or have others listen to you in an empathetic manner. Barriers to effective communication 1. Commanding phrases like you must or you have to. Number 2, browbeating phrases like if you don't, then, or you better or else. Shoulding people phrases. It is your duty to, or you should, or you ought to. Scolding phrases like, let me tell you why you are wrong, or do you realize? Giving unrequested advice. What I would do is, or it would be best if you. Morally judgmental phrases like, you are bad, lazy, that make a person feel like their character is being judged. Playing shrink, like you're just trying to get attention, or I know what you need. Being a district attorney with many irritating questions such as why, what, how, when, who, and other prying types of questions. In addition to avoiding these known barriers to empathetic communication, you should also be aware of your nonverbal messages, such as your facial expressions. The language of our emotions is spoken by our faces, not with words that come out of our mouths, but with expressions formed by our facial muscles. Touch is a very basic way to connect with other human beings, which, like facial expressions, is a natural form of communication that everyone understands. Touch can be a powerful, trusted way to communicate both your feelings and also that you understand how someone else feels. The right touch at the right time can seem mountains, even though it may last only a moment. Eye contact is an important communication tool in learning to feel empathy for another human being. It has been said that the eyes are the window to the soul. Eye contact helps you feel connected to others and also helps others feel connected to you. Eye contact means different things in different cultures, however. It is not quite the universal language that touch and facial expressions are. Tone of voice refers to the manner in which a verbal statement is presented. Your tone of voice reflects emotion and mood. To increase empathy, it is extremely important to be mindful of the message being conveyed by the tone of voice of another. When relating to others, be especially aware of your tone and ask yourself if it is consistent with the words you are using. If your words and tone are not in agreement, you can bet that the listener will be responding to your tone as much or more, if not your words. Stance and physical appearance communicate to us much about how a person is feeling and also gives others nonverbal messages regarding our emotional states. How close someone stands to us may be a message as to their positive feelings for us. Folded arms may signal defensiveness. Clenched hands on hips with outstretched elbows and legs apart stance is typical of mothers scolding their children and may remind us of being scolded. Acceptance is the ability to see that others have a right to their feelings and viewpoints. We must allow people to have feelings without telling them how they should feel or think. Acceptance of others' feelings is not easy when people act differently than we do. Empathetic people understand that feelings are difficult to control and that most people do the best they can at the time with the knowledge, skills, abilities, or information they have. Try not to judge others, even though it is common to have difficulty with those who are different from us. Remember that had your life circumstances been exactly like those of another, you may have made the same decisions. As someone very wise once said, do not judge another until you have walked a mile in his or her shoes. To practice acceptance as an empathy skill, it is also important to keep in mind that people have limitations and unique vulnerabilities. Understanding this and being more tolerant of others with their limitations is a major step toward empathy. Do we have a choice as to how we will deal with emotions felt when confronted with people or situations that trigger certain feelings in us? The answer to that question is a little bit complicated. Most would agree that one of the unique characteristics of human beings, as opposed to other animals, is the ability to have choices in how we deal with things that happen to us, even if the emotions that are triggered in us are not 100% under our control when they first occur. Having choices means that we can make decisions about how we will respond to a situation rather than just reacting to it. This involves taking personal responsibility for your feelings and your behavior. To easily remember this idea, instead of saying the word responsible, say response-able. Some people just have a really hard time understanding this concept of being response-able as they go through life constantly blaming others and circumstances for their anger and angry behavior. Anger management works much better when people accept the idea of personal responsibility for their feelings and their behavior. In fact, being flexible in how we respond to a situation is one of the signs of good mental health. Persons with flexibility do not continue to do the things that get results they don't want. Instead, they are able to adjust their responses depending on the situation and the outcome they desire. There are many advantages to learning to be more flexible and response-able in dealing with the stresses and frustrations of your life. At the top of the list is a sense of empowerment. It just feels good and powerful to know that you are in charge of your response rather than being controlled by other people or circumstances. Many people notice their anger level going down as their feeling of empowerment goes up. Another advantage to being more flexible in your responses is that it changes how people respond to you. This is a great way to reduce conflict in your life and change the rules of how others treat you without having to get angry, demanding, or aggressive. How do you learn to respond differently? The answer is to see it as a 3-step process. Look at your attitude, find ways to regulate your emotions, and try alternative behaviors. Our attitude toward what happens to us can drastically alter our feelings toward it. That negative voice in your head can be quite convincing, persuading you to judge others, be pessimistic, or think negatively, all the while pulling in all the destructive feelings that go along with those destructive thoughts. You can create a more persuasive voice that helps you find an equally believable, more optimistic viewpoint. You'll be more likely to cut others some slack, cut yourself more slack, see more options, and feel less angry. Attitude change can also help you appreciate more what's right in your world and in your life, and that can help you regulate your feelings. Generating feelings of gratitude on purpose reduces the amount of damaging stress hormones in your body. While the amount of flexibility we have in our emotions is dependent on many things, including our genes, our emotional experiences early in life, and our stress levels, our brains are very plastic and to some extent can be molded throughout our lives. In fact, everyday experiences we have can actually change our brain structure and brain chemistry. No longer is it thought that all those connections in our brain that determine our feelings and behavior are fixed for life after a certain age. What this means for people learning to manage anger better is that by learning to respond differently to all those anger triggers in your life may actually be a way to modify how your brain is wired so that it may be easier to deal with future anger triggers. You may still get angry, but less so as your brain responds differently to new information and life experiences. Behaving differently is one of the most effective ways to show response flexibility and get different results in your life. But doing things differently is not easy because we are creatures of habit and we tend to behave in ways that we are familiar and comfortable with. While it often feels risky or uncomfortable to try different approaches to deal with things that make us angry, it is worth the effort because, as the saying goes, if you keep doing what you do, you will keep getting what you've got. One of the challenges in behaving differently is, of course, coming up with ideas about other ways we can behave in a situation. There is a strong tendency to repeat our past and do things as we have learned to do them, without questioning or challenging what we do. Once we understand that a feeling does not necessarily lead to any particular behavior, we can give ourselves permission to feel angry. Many people find this concept liberating, to discover that specific actions and feelings are not necessarily connected. For some reason, whenever I get upset, I'm always putting myself down. Even my friends tell me I am just too hard on myself. Sometimes I even tell myself that I'm worthless and stupid when I make mistakes. It really makes me feel awful and angry at myself. These comments are an example of a pattern of negative self-talk. Negative self-talk is often painful, harmful to our self-esteem, and sends us in a downward spiral. On the other hand, positive self-talk is a powerful tool to break the cycle of negativity that can often pollute our minds when we get angry, stressed, depressed, or feel anxious. We all have a voice in our mind that tells us messages and stories about situations in our lives. It is our self-talk that can often determine how we feel and think about a situation. The more positive our self-talk, the more positive we start to view situations. We strongly believe that as human beings, we are responsible for our own behavior. This is especially true with regard to control and expression of angry feelings. While angry feelings may certainly be triggered by any number of frustrating events or people in our world, it is still up to you to decide how angry things make you and how you are going to deal with those angry feelings. A crucial tool in dealing with these angry feelings is changing that conversation with yourself. Although you may not realize it, you are constantly telling yourself all kinds of things that cause you to have certain feelings or emotions. Learning to change that self-talk empowers you to deal with anger more effectively in terms of how strongly you feel the anger, how long you hold on to your anger, and what you do as a result of your anger. The first step in changing that conversation with yourself is to take responsibility for your feelings rather than blaming others or situations for how you are feeling. This is not easy because we live in a society that teaches us to blame others or outside events for our feelings rather than teaching us personal responsibility for our emotions. The following is a list of common self-talk statements that most people have that indicate not taking responsibility for feelings, and a more accurate, empowering self-statement suggested for dealing with that anger. Instead of saying, "He made me mad," say to yourself, "I made myself mad. I made myself madder than I needed to." Instead of saying, "It got me upset," say to yourself, "I upset myself. I upset myself more than necessary." Instead of saying, "She shouldn't upset me that way," say to yourself, "Better that I not upset myself. Better that I control how upset I get." Automatic thinking is a self-thought we automatically have in certain situations based on beliefs we have about our world. Automatic thinking occurs in the following ways. A, an event or an adversity in life. An example is, you're on the road, you're delayed by a driver in front of you going 10 miles an hour below the speed limit. B, your beliefs and automatic thoughts about the situation. Your thoughts go to, "What a jerk. I'm going to get even. She did that to me on purpose. Why does this always happen to me? Why can't she just get out of my way?" C, challenging that self-talk. "She is not driving slowly to make me late. She probably isn't even aware of me." D, different ways of looking at things. Increased tolerance and more understanding of possible reasons for the slow driving. Resolve not to take it personally. Understanding that maintaining a hostile attitude on the road is harmful to society, innocent drivers, their families, and their loved ones. And E, emotions and feelings. You get frustration, anger, and outrage all about this one situation. Learning to think in these new ways is always a challenge for most people because it doesn't seem natural, and many times it doesn't even seem true. This is because our first thoughts are automatic, based on beliefs we have about the world around us. Listen to yourself as you think about things that make you angry, and then see if you can talk yourself out of that anger by challenging your beliefs and then submitting new self-talk that reduces those angry feelings. Here are some examples of new self-talk that has helped others in angry situations. It is not essential that life and other people in my world be kind to me. People are going to be the way they are, and I need not get upset over this. Others have a right to do things that I consider stupid or wrong. I am not 100% right, and he is not 100% wrong on any matter of dispute. Others have free will and can willfully and freely do things against my personal values. Others will treat me as they choose to, not how I choose them to. As much as I would like others to be reliable, it does not mean that they must. I can deal with disappointments without turning them into disasters. Things don't always have to go my way. I can stay calm and I can handle this. Optimists tend to interpret their troubles as transient, controllable, and specific to situations. When good things happen, optimists believe the causes are permanent, resulting from traits and abilities. Optimists further believe that good events will enhance everything they do. Pessimists, on the other hand, believe their troubles will last forever, will undermine everything they do, and believe their troubles are basically beyond their control. When good things happen to pessimists, they see them as temporary and caused by specific factors that will eventually change and lead to negative outcomes. Optimism creates better resistance to depression when bad events strike, better performance at work, and better physical health. Optimism is also a powerful antidote to anger. To learn how to become an optimist, you first need to recognize, then dispute your pessimistic thoughts. People often do not pay attention to their thoughts, which results in not recognizing how destructive they can be in leading to negative emotions. The key is to recognize your pessimistic thoughts and then treat them as if they were uttered by someone else, an external person, a rival, whose mission in life is to make you miserable. Basically, you can become an optimist by learning to disagree with yourself, challenging your pessimistic thinking patterns and replacing them with more positive patterns. Optimism is a style of interpreting events that occur in your world. It is your personal theory or explanation of why both good things and bad things happen to you. While everyone experiences both setbacks and victories in the normal course of life, optimists have a very distinct style of explaining things to themselves. The knack of disputing your beliefs is a thought skill, the mastery of which will morph you into the optimistic style of thinking. There are 4 ways to do this. Number 1, look at the evidence. The most convincing way of disputing a negative belief is to show that it is factually incorrect. Most of the time, you will have reality on your side. Your role is that of a detective as you ask, what is the evidence for my belief? An example would be, is it really true that you never succeed in anything? It's very doubtful. Everybody succeeds some of the time. Using this skill of looking at the evidence, you can defeat pessimism with more accurate perception and recall what is really true. Number 2, consider alternative causes. Most events in the world have more than one cause. Pessimists latch on to the most insidious. Optimists tend more to give themselves a break. For example, a marital breakup usually has many causes that probably contributed to its downfall. You can blame yourself. You can blame your partner. A more optimistic interpretation is that neither partner failed as an individual. It was the relationship that failed. Number 3, put events into perspective. If the facts are not on your side and you cannot honestly see other causes of a negative event, you will need to look at the implications of your beliefs to become an optimistic thinker. Is the event really as catastrophic as you may be making it in your mind? Here's a hint. Few things are. Usually, the implications or long-term effects of your misfortune aren't as awful or devastating as you may be seeing them. To think more optimistically, you could view the impact of the negative event in a different way that would decrease your anger. Number 4, is your belief useful? Even though a belief may be true, it may not be useful. Some beliefs cause more grief than they are worth. You may tell yourself you're a failure. This belief will likely cause you to stop trying. Instead, substitute a more useful belief like, just because I failed once doesn't make me a failure. Then behave accordingly with your new belief. It is important to understand that there are many different communication styles, yet only one that tends to yield the results we are seeking. Learning to express your primary feelings and needs clearly, calmly, and with good eye contact is what assertive communication is all about. Good communication skills are an essential ingredient in anger management because poor communication causes untold emotional hurt, misunderstandings, and conflict. Words are powerful, but the message we convey to others is even more powerful and often determines how people respond to us and how we feel toward them. Because communication is a two-way process, people with good communication skills are good at receiving messages from others as well as delivering them. If you look at people in your life and also look at your own behavior, you may discover certain patterns of communication. Some patterns are negative and harmful, while others are positive and productive. Frequently, persons who have anger problems use harmful ways of communicating to others. Harmful in the sense that it disrupts relationships and usually does not accomplish your goals. Assertive communication, on the other hand, is a much more effective way to get what you want and what you need without the negative consequences. Developing assertive communication skills will work for you by making you a more effective and less stressed person. Harmful communication patterns are usually those that occur in people's lives before they start anger management classes. Harmful communication patterns also are predictors of divorce and partner conflict. Harmful pattern number 1, avoidance. This is also called stonewalling. It means being emotionally unavailable, cutting yourself off emotionally from the person you have an issue with. It can also mean not dealing with an issue by changing the topic, ignoring the other when they speak to you, or doing something else when your partner tries to discuss important things with you. Harmful pattern number 2 is criticism. Being overly critical towards others is a harmful communication pattern because it puts other people on the defensive and causes them to have negative feelings toward you. It is another communication pattern that predicts divorce. Does this mean we can never complain about things or let people know we are dissatisfied with them or their behavior? Of course not. But to communicate effectively, we need to complain in a certain way. A complaint is a specific statement of anger, distress, displeasure, or other negativity. Criticism involves attacking someone's personality or character rather than a specific behavior. In relationships, a criticism takes a complaint and adds blame. It feels like you as a person are being attacked or judged by the other person. Most people cannot deal with too much criticism over a long period of time. Often, highly critical people don't see themselves that way. Rather, they truly think they are helping their partner in some way by constantly pointing out defects in their character and inadequacies. Harmful pattern number 3, passive aggression. The passive-aggressive pattern is a harmful, covert way of communicating angry feelings, but indirectly, and sometimes without you knowing that you are doing it. It is a way of getting back at people without telling them why, instead of confronting them head-on. The passive-aggressive communicator is trying to manipulate you or some situation in an underhanded way. The passive-aggressive communicator may also sabotage us in our efforts, but in a way that is difficult to prove that is what they are doing. When confronted, they will often deny that they are angry with you or that they are doing anything to harm you. Harmful pattern number 4 is aggression. A certain amount of aggression in some situations is acceptable, but some people constantly charge around like a bull in a china shop to get what they want, and this is extremely harmful to good communication. Overly aggressive people like to have things their own way and often express feelings in a way that punishes or intimidates others. Aggressive people tend to communicate by getting in your face. They get too close to you or they stand while you are seated so they can dominate you. Harmful pattern number 5, defensiveness. Defensiveness is a communication style that people use to emotionally protect themselves rather than to openly listen to others or to honestly express their own feelings. Defensive people are not able to accept influence from others, especially intimate partners, and therefore it is another predictor of divorce. Defensive people have a force field or shield around them that prevents them from being able to take personal responsibility for conflicts or problems with others. Defensive people are not open to feedback from others and are not open to changing or improving themselves. They see no need to change themselves. They take criticism very personally and are easily offended by even mild criticism or suggestions by others. Harmful pattern number 6 is contempt. Contempt is a communication style of regarding someone or something as inferior or less than. Sometimes it means treating others with scorn, as if we regard them as worthless. When we are treated with contempt by others, we feel despised, dishonored, or disgraced. It is a very destructive way to relate to others. Assertive communication is a way to communicate so that you convey your rights in a good way. Assertive communication helps people clearly explain their wants, needs, and feelings to other people. It is a way of getting things that you want without violating or offending others' rights or having to walk away without getting what you want. Assertive people tell others what they want and need clearly. Assertive communication skills are the antidote to harmful and destructive communication patterns. There are 6 steps to assertive communication. Each of these steps is a remedy to the harmful communication patterns that we just discussed. Assertive remedy number 1, send clear messages. The assertive communicators send clear messages, making sure that the message received is the message you send. About 80% of the message communicated is done without words by your nonverbal behavior. If your words say one thing, but your body language says something else, the listener may be quite confused. It's not always what you say that people respond to, but how you say it. Assertive remedy number 2, learn how to listen. Assertive people have developed their listening skills. Most people do not have very good listening skills. Rather than really listening to you, many people unfortunately listen with their answer running, meaning that they are thinking of a response rather than listening deeply to what you are saying. Hearing is done with our ears, while listening is done with our heart. Listening is an active process. The listener must take an active role in the communication process. Assertive remedy number 3, express complaints. Words have tremendous power to determine how other people experience us and how they respond to us. People with good assertive communication skills focus on the problem behavior. Stick to the point, don't use labels, and make I statements rather than you statements. Assertive remedy number 4, acknowledge your part in conflicts. Anger is often an escalating process involving 2 people who create negative feelings in each other, sometimes instantly and sometimes over a long period of time. When this happens, it is natural to blame the other person entirely for the problem, especially when we are angry and in a defensive mode. But once we return to normal, the assertive communicator is able to accept some of the responsibility for the conflict. Taking some responsibility is an indication of emotional maturity, is an antidote or remedy to defensiveness. You never win an emotional argument with facts, figures, or logic. Assertive remedy number 5, give and take praise. Praise is an important part of assertive communication, both in terms of being able to give praise and take praise. Praise is a positive remedy for both critical and contemptuous ways of communicating. Praise involves seeing the positive, what is right, and what you can honor and appreciate about the other person. Assertive remedy number 6. Express feelings openly. Expressing feelings openly is a remedy for the harmful and destructive passive-aggressive communication style. Many angry people store feelings or grievances they have toward others, but unfortunately, the negative feelings often do not go away, even if they are not expressed on the surface. It is like putting the feelings in a bottle. You try to put the lid on tightly, but some of those suppressed feelings find a way to leak out. It is much better to deal with anger or resentment directly before things get out of hand. If people don't know you are upset with them, how can they change? Conflicts become unmanageable because of the thoughts and emotions that get involved. Automatic thoughts, that is, those thoughts that have no real evidence to support them, are often the cause of unresolved conflicts. These thoughts can lead to incorrect assumptions about the situation or the persons involved in the conflict. Emotions can also get in the way of conflict resolution. Often, when misunderstood, people can be left feeling angry, hurt, afraid, confused, and envious. These emotions can lead to further automatic thoughts. A conflict resolution approach is the method in which a person attempts to eliminate or minimize a conflict between the persons involved. Accommodating. This is when you cooperate to a high degree. It may be at your own expense and actually work against your own goals, objectives, and desired outcomes. This approach is effective when the other party is the expert or has a better solution. It can also be effective for preserving future relations with the other party. Avoiding. This is when you simply avoid the issue. You aren't helping the other party reach their goals, and you aren't assertively pursuing your own. This works when the issue is trivial or when you have no chance of winning. It can also be effective when the issue would be very costly or when the atmosphere is emotionally charged and you need to create some space. Sometimes issues will resolve themselves, but hope is not a strategy. In general, avoiding is not a good long-term strategy. Collaborating. This is where you partner or pair up with the other party to achieve both your goals. This is how you can break free of the win-lose and seek the win-win. This can be effective for complex scenarios where you need to find a novel solution. This can also mean reframing the challenge to create a bigger space and room for everybody's ideas. The downside is that it requires a high degree of trust, and reaching a consensus can require a lot of time and effort to get everybody on board. Competing. This is the win-lose approach. You act in a very assertive way to achieve your goals without seeking to cooperate with the other party, which may be at the expense of the other party. This approach may be appropriate for emergencies when time is of the essence or when you need quick, decisive action, and people are aware of and support the approach. Compromising. This is the lose-lose scenario where neither party really achieves what they want. This requires a moderate level of assertiveness and cooperation. It may be appropriate for scenarios where you need a temporary solution or where both sides have equally important goals. Here are some things to say to the person you are in conflict with that will show you are taking some of the responsibility for the problem and that you want to work things out in a collaborative way. My reactions were too extreme. I'm sorry. Even though I still feel I was right about the issue, my reaction wasn't right and I apologize for that. Wow, I really blew that one. Let me try again. I can see my part in all of this. I see your point. I know this isn't your fault. We are both saying that this is not your problem. It is our problem. I never thought of things that way. I might be wrong here. I think your point of view makes sense. Let me start again in a softer way. For many of us, we expect much more that is reasonable in certain situations. By learning how to adjust our expectations to an appropriate level, we are often left feeling more satisfied and less frustrated in situations at work, school, with family members, and most importantly, with ourselves. Anger and stress can often be caused when our expectations are too far apart from what is realistic to achieve. When we create expectations that are not realistic, we often tend to feel more stressed out, angry, and let ourselves and those around us down. Anger results by mentally comparing the behavior of others to what you expected them to do or to be. Sometimes that is a reasonable thing to do, but often it is not because we have too high or wrong expectations of ourselves and those around us. Another way of saying this is that anger is often triggered by the difference between what we expect and what we get. It is important to figure out exactly what reasonable means in terms of expectations. If expectations are too low, you will feel cheated in life, or worse, you will feel that you are settling. On the other hand, if expectations are too high, then the reality of the experience will suffer from the comparison, and you may experience disappointment and other negative emotions, such as anger. The real cause of anger isn't all those things that happen to us. Rather, the root of the problem is in how we assess or evaluate what happens to us and how other people behave. Does this mean that we shouldn't have expectations of others? Of course not. That would be impossible and also not very wise, since other people often will rise to the occasion if you have high expectations of them. Having high expectations of yourself can often motivate you to high achievement, personal growth, and accomplishment. Anger results by mentally comparing the behavior of others to what you expect them to do, to have, or to be. If people do not meet your expectations, rather than becoming frustrated, irritated, or angry toward them, why not put them into a different category of your mind? Learn to adjust both the level and the type of those expectations, and you will have a powerful tool for anger management. Step 1, decide what is reasonable and what is not. One way to do it is think about it when you are calm and cool. Many things that seemed reasonable when you were worked up seem ridiculous and petty in the cold light of day. Make yourself take a time out and think things through before responding. It is so much easier to decide what is reasonable or not with a clear head. Another way to do it is to compare someone's behavior with other people in that situation or age group. If you still are not sure if your expectation is reasonable, try asking peers or friends for honest feedback. Good friends will tell you the truth and help you adjust those expectations in line with common standards in your social group or community. Step 2, take the word should out of your vocabulary. We can't control other people. People behave the way they behave for their own reasons. Avoid the trap of getting upset because others don't behave as they should. This sets up an expectation on your part that may not be reasonable, and it may also be wrong. Instead of shoulding on yourself, try changing your vocabulary to words like, I would prefer if, it would be nice if, instead of they should. Step 3. Remember that sometimes people or situations have more limitations than you give them credit for. People often behave badly toward us because they are limited or have a problem, but not because they are purposefully trying to make us miserable. We want them to live up to our expectations, but in truth, they are fallible people who may not be able to. Perhaps they have a different agenda in life besides meeting your expectations. Step number 4. Remind yourself that the way you see things may not be how other people see the same things or events. Rather than convincing yourself they are wrong, tell yourself that they simply see things differently than you do. No need to get angry over this. They may be as convinced of their truth as you are of yours. If others don't agree with you, they may honestly remember things differently than you do. To control your anger, adjust your expectations of others and give them a break. They may honestly be remembering things quite differently from you, or they may have seen things from a different perspective than you to begin with. Step 5. Find other ways to get your needs met. The underlying reason we often get angry at others or situations when our expectations are not met is because our needs are not being met as a result of the situation or the behavior of the other. Rather than getting angry, we need to consider 2 other ways to deal with the situation, ways that are far more effective. First, learn to communicate your needs to the other that are not being satisfied by them not meeting your expectations. Second, find other ways to satisfy those needs. Sometimes we don't effectively communicate our needs to people, so they don't have a clue what is underlying our anger. It is much more effective to recognize and express that underlying need rather than just getting angry. If you learn to do this, you will find that people will know better how to respond to you. We all have needs. It is not selfish to recognize and try to get our needs fulfilled. It may be helpful to look at what our needs are, according to psychologist Abraham Maslow, who devised a hierarchy of needs. According to Maslow, lower needs must be met before we are capable of satisfying the next level of need. Physiological needs. These needs are the very basic needs such as air, food, sleep, and sex. Fulfillment of these needs motivate us to alleviate them as soon as possible to get back to normal. Once satisfied, we can think about how to satisfy other higher order needs. Safety needs. Safety needs are mostly psychological in nature and have to do with establishing stability and consistency in our world. This need motivates us to try and achieve predictability in our lives. Some people have a very high need for security in most every aspect of their lives, while other people have a much lower need for safety. Love and belonging needs. Most humans have a desire to belong to groups, to feel loved by others, and to be accepted by others. Esteem needs. This category includes both self-esteem and being esteemed or valued by others. Persons with good mental health need to feel good about themselves and their lives. Much of our behavior is directed toward having these feelings of high self-esteem. Most of us have a need for recognition from others, the need for praise, and the need to feel that we are valued by others. Self-actualization. The need for self-actualization is the desire to become more and more what one is, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. People at this level seek knowledge, peace, self-fulfillment, meaning, and spirituality. Finding other ways to satisfy your needs. Communicating clearly what your needs are is a powerful tool for anger management and improving your relationships. Certain people in your life are incapable, uninterested, or unwilling to meet some of your needs. In this case, you may want to explore and find alternative ways to get what you need, rather than being constantly upset with those who aren't doing what they should. Finding alternative ways to become a happier and less angry person is a journey in self-development that begins by taking responsibility for your own needs and finding workable and acceptable ways of satisfying those needs. Each of us has experienced hurt brought on by remarks made by friends, family members, co-workers, neighbors, or other people in our lives. If we respond skillfully, we can shake it off or otherwise deal with the hurt in a way that does not affect our lives for long. However, sometimes we don't deal with it well, resulting in developing a grievance toward that person or situation. Grievances are formed when we are unable to deal successfully, when we don't get what we want or deserve, and then we dwell on the injustice in our minds. Forgiveness is the process of healing that grievance so we can live with the injustice in a peaceful way. There are 3 steps involved in developing a grievance. You take the offense too personally, you blame the offender for how you feel, then you create a grievance story. When an offense occurs, when we feel emotional pain, or when something bad happens to us, it is natural to say to yourself, "Why me? Why am I the only one?" If we have certain personality traits or a certain type of background, we might even convince ourselves that bad things happen to us more frequently than to other people. Locking ourselves into this kind of thinking puts us on the road to forming a grievance because it means we are focusing on the event in a way to make it personal for us, when in reality, most events have both personal and impersonal elements to them. As an alternative, we should try to see both the personal and the impersonal nature of our hurt. Remembering how common our suffering is in no way is meant to make it seem trivial or unimportant, but seeing the broader picture is an important healing tool to reduce your pain and resentment toward what happened to you. A second way to take that offense less personally is to recognize that most offenses are committed without the intention of hurting anyone personally. But finding a way to seeing both the personal and impersonal aspects of your grievance is the first step in your healing process. Taking things less personally does not mean that we have to like what was done to us or that we deny the impact on us. But finding a way to see both the impersonal and personal aspects of your grievances is the first step in your healing process. Blaming others for how we manage anger ultimately interferes with experiencing true self-worth and genuine empowerment. Each time we blame others for our actions, we diminish our power and enhance our sense of victimhood. And when we perceive ourselves as a victim, we unwittingly foster feelings of powerlessness, helplessness, and pessimism, all of which may increase our proneness for anger arousal. Blaming others denies our autonomy, our free agency to make choices. In the process, we experience diminished freedom. Blaming leads to a cultivation of victimhood that increases the likelihood for anger. Blaming others can also be viewed as deriving from, as well as contributing to, dependency. Taking responsibility for ourselves is not always easy. Taking responsibility for ourselves can inherently arouse anxiety. It may heighten our sense of feeling alone as well as confused regarding the choices we make in our lives. It is the kind of anxiety that moves many of us to seek a distraction, including blaming others for how we live our lives. Blaming others distracts us from the constructive but difficult task of self-reflection. While self-reflection can be uncomfortable, it is an essential component of taking responsibility for ourselves. Blaming others constricts our sense of choice, while self-reflection expands it. Through self-reflection, we more clearly define our desires and how to constructively satisfy them. We develop connection with ourselves that informs the choices we make regarding our lives. Blaming others contributes to feelings of helplessness and powerlessness. This can lead not only to anger, but to depression as well. Adult anger has been increasingly recognized as a sign of depression. While blaming others may be, in part, derived from depression, it only further exacerbates those feelings of helplessness and powerlessness associated with depression. Blaming others for our anger and how we manage it robs us of the opportunity to develop resilience to better handle life's challenges. Each moment we blame ourselves or others for how we manage anger, we make it that much more difficult to examine the ways in which we get in our own way. And in the process, we move further away from actually satisfying our key desires. Each time we blame others for our anger, we miss out on an opportunity for personal growth. Blaming leads to blaming. The more frequently we blame others for how we react, the more likely we will continue to do so. And the more we respond aggressively, the more such aggression becomes the go-to reaction. As children grow past their second birthdays, storytelling becomes a vital form of communicating with other children and adults. Storytelling is also vital for children to understand themselves and their lives. It helps us all make sense of our lives and of other people. Stories enable us to understand the complex social worlds in which we all live. When someone hurts us, it is natural to develop a story about it that we repeat to others and ourselves. Soon the story becomes part of our grievance and becomes embedded in our minds as absolute fact. But there are two problems with this, both of which might cause you to think differently about your story. The story you tell about your hurt changes according to whether you were the offender or the offended, and also is influenced greatly by your past personal experiences and memories. Although your story may certainly be true, you may be telling it in a way to yourself and to others that hurts you more than it helps you. There are numerous ways to interpret life events. Why not pick the interpretation that is most beneficial to your well-being and emotional healing? Most grievance stories are based on our tale of helplessness and frustration because of what another person or situation did to us. The grievance story seems true every time we tell it because our minds want to accept our version of things. But if we are not careful, our grievance story can lock us into continuing hurt, pain, and helplessness and prevent us from moving forward in our lives. Our grievance stories not only affect us, but also our children. The story parents have about their own lives can greatly affect how securely their children will grow up. Even if parents have had much trauma in their own lives, how they see themselves as having dealt with it has more to do with the emotional connection and bonding they have with their own children than does the fact of having had the trauma. The positive effects of this more secure bonding and attachment lasts a lifetime for their children. For all these reasons, it is crucial to change your grievance story as part of your process of forgiveness and achieving inner peace. The trick is to amend it so that you are a hero or survivor of your trauma rather than a victim to it. Develop a story that shows how you overcame difficulty or became a better person or benefited in the long run from what happened to you. Should you always forgive? The answer to this question always comes down to personal choices and decisions. Some people feel that certain things cannot and should not be forgiven, while others feel that ultimately anything can be forgiven. Forgiving does not mean that you forget the offense. You may never forget, and probably shouldn't, what happened to you. But after forgiveness, you can remember it without the emotional pain connected to it. Forgiving does not mean that you are saying what they did to you was okay. Quite the opposite. We can forgive, but still see what happened to you as horrific or unjust. You don't need to even tell people that you forgive them. The forgiveness occurs in your head, not in conversation with them. Although in some circumstances you may want to have a dialogue about it, it often backfires if you go up to someone and say, "I forgive you." This occurs because the offending person often does not see himself as the problem. Better to do the forgiveness in your own mind and heart. Forgiving does not mean you will automatically trust them again. Forgiveness and trust are two separate issues. Even after forgiveness, it may take a long time to rebuild that trust, if ever. To instantly trust someone again after they have violated you in some way is not a sign of good mental health or strong self-esteem. Forgiving does not necessarily mean you like or love the offender or even want to be in a future relationship with them. Absence of angry feelings doesn't necessarily create warm, positive, or loving feelings in you for the offender. At best, forgiving may bring you up to neutral in your feelings toward them. You do not need to forgive all at once. To start with, maybe you can only forgive 10%, just to open the door. After a period of time, you might want to open the door just a little wider and forgive maybe another 20%, and so on. Forgiveness is a process that takes time and patience to complete. Here are some steps to help you get started. Write down your grievance or issue that you would like to forgive. Make a decision and commit to forgive. You must be ready for this step, remembering that forgiveness is for you and not for anyone else. No one else even needs to know about your decision. Determine your goal of forgiveness. Remembering that forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciling with the person who upset you. Remember also that by forgiving, it does not mean you are condoning their actions or what they did to you. Recognize that forgiveness can be defined as peace and understanding that comes from blaming less that which has hurt you, taking the experience less personally, and changing your grievance story. Commit to relaxing and soothing yourself whenever you start getting upset upon thinking of your grievance. List your positive intentions. This involves focusing on other ways to get your positive goals met rather than through the experience that has hurt you. Grievances may derail us, throw us off course, causing us to lose motivation to keep pursuing what we want and what is important to us. Refocus on positives in your life. Remember that a life well lived is your best revenge. Instead of focusing on your hurt and pain, learn to look for the positives in your life. If you look hard enough, you will find many things in your life to be grateful for. People who find a way to see love, beauty, and kindness around them are better able to forgive and get past their life grievances. Remember, your world is filled with positives and negatives, love and hatred, beauty and ugliness, pain and joy, kindness and cruelty. It is up to you to decide what to focus on. What does it mean to retreat and think things over? Basically, this means to temporarily distance yourself from each other for a period of time so that both of you can calm down. This allows your bodily systems to return to normal and allows your normally good reasoning and thinking ability to return. You may be thinking, that's easier said than done. Yes, that is true, because this is one of those tools that sounds deceptively simple. Yet it is by no means easy to do for at least two reasons. First, there is a common myth among many of us that all relationship conflicts should be settled in the moment while the intense feelings are present. If you do not do this, you may be accused of avoiding the issue or invalidating the feelings of your partner. Hence, many couples refuse to give their partner space during an argument and insist on immediate discussion and resolution of the issue. Even worse, in misguided attempts to try and gain control of the situation, spouses will sometimes physically block the escape of their angry partner or will follow them from room to room demanding discussion. This is a dangerous practice as it can escalate levels of anger even further and cause partners to do and say things they don't really mean and may later regret. A second reason this tool is challenging to use effectively is because once stress and anger levels reach a certain point, one or both partners reach a point of no return. In effect, the emotional brain takes over and one or both partners feel flooded with negative feelings, making it difficult to disengage from each other and stop the fight. It is like your brain is hijacked from reason by all the intense emotions you are feeling. These are some of the warning signs that you should look for to alert you to the fact that you are getting too angry to function at 100%. Feeling overwhelmed during an argument, raising your voice to an unusual level, feeling out of control with your temper, feeling so much negativity that you have difficulty focusing on your thoughts, inability to think straight when starting to feel hostile, feeling like running away during your fights. Small issues suddenly become big ones. inability to calm yourself down during the argument. Your heart races and your muscles tense up. Temporarily removing yourself from the situation allows your body to return to normal, provides a cooling down time, and allows your brain to return to its normal state in which you can reason and think better. This tool also prevents you or the other person from saying unfair or hurtful things in the heat of battle, which can easily escalate into further conflicts and resentments, causing you and the other person to become even more emotionally cut off and distanced from each other. For this tool to work effectively, you must stick to some basic rules when using it. Rule number 1, you can only use the tool for yourself, not the other person. It does not usually work for you to tell the other person that it is time for them to retreat. Rule number 2, announce that you need to take a time out and retreat before you do it. This should be done using assertive communication in a way that clearly conveys your need to leave before things get out of hand, as opposed to your leaving to merely avoid dealing with the situation. Rule number 3, you need to commit to a reasonable length of time to return and deal with the issue. The average person takes from 20 minutes to 1 hour for their bodies to return to normal after an upsetting relationship battle. If you don't commit to a specific and reasonable amount of time in returning, the other person may feel abandoned and ignored, which will only make things worse. Rule number 4, be very careful and very selective in who you talk to during your retreat time. There is a natural tendency to contact a friend or sympathetic relative who you know will take your side in the dispute or conflict. We all need support in times of crisis, and sometimes good friends or rational relatives can give us perspective and clarity, as well as that much-needed understanding and sympathy when we are in crisis. But you should be careful in discussing relationship problems with others, especially family, because they may permanently have a negative view of the other person, even after you have made up and things are now fixed in the relationship. You can't necessarily expect your family to turn the positive emotions back on like you have. Finally, you are away from the situation, but still fuming, agitated, and upset. What should you do during this time to calm down and prepare for the upcoming return to situation or the other person? Ideally, you should remain alone and do 2 things. Soothe yourself to feel better, calm yourself and gain perspective, and change your internal conversation, your self-talk, to control those angry feelings. There is an excellent exercise called freeze frame that is ideal for self-soothing during your retreat time. The best part is that while it only takes a couple of minutes to do it, the results can be quite astounding. The technique is based on the idea that our conscious life is made up of a series of incidents or frames strung together over time. When flooded and overwhelmed, it helps to stop the movie or freeze just one frame. This frame can be the conflict you had with your partner before leaving to regroup and gather your emotional resources. Once you freeze this frame in your mind, close your eyes. Put your hand on your heart and pretend your heart is breathing as you inhale and exhale. Make a sincere effort to shift your focus away from your racing mind or disturbed emotions to the area around your heart. As you relax and calm down, try recalling the feelings of a positive time or experience you've had in your life. Now, using your intuition, common sense, and sincerity, ask your heart what would be a better response to the situation, one that would repair the damage to your relationship. Then, listen to what your heart answers to your question. Don't worry if you have trouble recalling that positive time or experience. The technique will help you even if you just feel neutral instead of positive during this step. Believe it or not, your heart may actually be able to do some of what your brain does in terms of giving you answers. It may be that your heart can actually function like a little satellite of your brain and may be able to give you some answers just like your brain does. It is crucial to change your self-talk before returning to the other person, or else you may find yourself more angry when you return than when you left. The following are some additional self-talk phrases that may be especially helpful to you during your retreat and think things over time. I am responsible for my own anger and my own feelings. Maybe we are trying to solve an unsolvable problem. I need to look at my part in the conflict. Maybe I expect too much from others. Maybe I expect too much from myself. I need to work on seeing things from his or her point of view. It doesn't matter who is right. Solving the problem is the most important thing. Having a good relationship is more important than winning this issue. This issue is not that important. I will pick my battles. I can decide how I will respond best to this situation. I have handled more stress than this in the past. Maybe we can find a compromise for this problem. Here are the course objectives we just discussed. Hopefully, you were able to gain some tools to help in managing your anger. If you have any questions, you can contact the Family Advocacy Program at 706-791-3579.